for there. We have 16, 17, 17, 18, and by the end of 18, 19, we have to use this. I don't know yet for sure if it's ongoing, but it does say block grant, and that might tend to believe that it will be.
Is there a, and maybe this is a Gordon question, but our superintendent, who knows all, probably knows this. If I'm a college counselor at the high school, what is my training that I do to stay up to date with how much college finance is changing and admissions are changing, and why an out-of-state small private school is just as good as a UC, depending on your income and all that kind of weird stuff?
Yeah.
I do know some of that, but I know somebody in the audience who would be more up to speed, up to date with that information. I think Jason could help us
So
with some more
they attend
detail.
conferences every year. They also get flyers and updates from all of those that are constantly streaming through, so.
Mr. Iverson, we are being live streamed on YouTube, and the microphone might be.
Oh, my Lord, yes.
So all of the counselors get updates. They also attend conferences every year. Cal State and UC puts on conferences for both. There's also private schools. We also took kind of an unprecedented measure a couple of years ago. And we allowed, in the state of California, we actually allowed the counselors to fly down and visit a bunch of the private schools throughout and then they kind of make it a tour coming up. Also, one of the things that's been happening that the counselors have been staying up on also is getting to know and build relationships with those schools. And so that's why we did the visits and getting to know all the different updates and also some of the different changes that now schools are so much schools within the school. It's not so much about did you get into this particular UC, it's can you get into that school within it. Same thing with private schools. So they've been doing a good job of keeping up with the trends at the high school and doing that. And then Urelli gets updates constantly. Also, they all belong to professional organizations. They're getting updates continually, and then contacts and things like that. So there's constant conferencing and things that go along with that as well.
Good. All right, so that's not necessarily a new expense that we would need to spend this money on then.
Okay.
This is also part of the new block grant, the planning requirements, developing a plan on how we'll spend the funds, and it's again to increase or improve services for our unduplicated students, our foster youth, our English learners, and our
Low income.
low income. Align with the LCAP and describe how the students will have access to A through G courses. And then we'll discuss the plan at one board meeting and adopt it at a subsequent, just like we do our budget and LCAP each year. So it requires a two-board meeting.
Penny, when you see college readiness, my first inclination was it meant high school only, but if you're talking about preparing students for A to G courses, is it possible that it might be used in middle school as well?
It's based on the grade 9-12
Okay.
ADA. So I believe the
It has to be a
intent
9-12, okay.
is for that, although I don't know for sure. Yes. And so then just the reporting requirements, we'll have to determine how we're going to measure the impact, and we'll need to report that January 1st of 2017. So then that's pretty much all the new stuff that was in the enacted budget. Not a lot of change, which is a little different than our last couple of prior years. There have been quite substantial changes. So what we can expect for 2017 and beyond, according to the governor, education funding will continue to be a priority. And then we're going to have that discussion about the adequacy of the funding, because if you recall when I was talking about that target in 2021, we're supposed to be at the level we were in 07-08, which obviously isn't adequate. But then we have to be really cautious because we have now these automatic pressures just for doing business that impact our expenses, and it's that big increase every year that we're experiencing with the CalSTRS and CalPERS, our pension plan increases. And then we have the new minimum wage increase that's coming into play, and it's ratcheting up each year until, I believe, in just 3 to 4 years from now, it'll be a minimum wage of $15 an hour. So we'll have to address how that affects mostly our classified staff salary schedule, because as we move up to maintain that minimum amount, then what will it do to our other cells, and the differences in between? So that'll have to be something we'll discuss with them. Right now, for this year, and I believe the following year, we should be okay because our minimum amount is, meets the requirement, because it's not yet at the $15.
Penny, can I ask about that minimum? I have a question that I'd like to ask. What I understood you to say, and I hadn't thought about that, is if we increase a new person on the step and column by $1, all of a sudden they've caught up to a position or two in
Yeah,
front of them. So in essence, what you're
changes
saying
that.
is we could see a whole shift of all these salaries.
It's something that we'll need to address, and I don't really know in what manner. Haven't really heard anything much about it yet, but I'm sure it'll be, coming up this year where we'll learn more about it and what potentially the impact will be. So see.
I hope that doesn't give you heartburn.
Well, we'll see. I don't know enough about it yet, so. And then there's the increase in non-salary benefits, which really does equal salary, is in the new maternity, paternity leaves. And then like our latest, the sick leave for substitutes, it's all a cost to our budget, and it's not something that we address in our formula, but it's increases to our expenses. And then I'm sure Katie and our superintendent are following closely the new benchmarks and so forth for our supplemental concentration grant spending, enhanced transparency, and that's where I feel very confident that our budget department does an excellent job of tracking all of our expenditures. They do a great job with that, so bring it on. We'll take care of that easily. Emerging state accountability system significantly impact annual LCAP practices and development. And that's just things getting tighter the more it evolves. And because it's new, it's been, I guess, what do you call it when the honeymoon stage, kind of? So, and then finally, our early childhood education, we talked a little bit about that before. It's kind of been put off on any requirements to start June of 2017, or July of 2017, but it's still going to be a topic of discussion, and that's where the district may be picking up more preschool early education. So
We'll put them on the roof.
A question about that.
Trustee Van Sant?
So does that mean that, sorry, so TK is on deck for this
It
fall?
is,
And is
it
it on
is.
deck for next fall then also, or it's still not clear?
I believe they're working, they realized that what they were trying to implement was
Too
too
fast?
soon. Yeah, too fast.
So then, in all likelihood, there'll be TK, the same format in the 17-18 school year as well?
That's what we believe right now.
Okay.
So we'll probably, in the governor's budget proposal in January, I'm sure there'll be more about it, so. But, and you know what? That's it. I think that was
Okay.
one of my shortest ones, so.
Yeah. Are there any questions, other questions by the board? In that case, may I have a motion to approve the 45-day budget revise?
Motion to approve the report as presented?
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, oh, I know, I'm sorry. All right, we have moved,
Yeah. Yep, you got
All right, Jason Iverson is going to present the survey results of the parent survey.
And Jason, before you start, I'm really pleased to announce that we got a much higher return rate this year, or last year, and we just received the results in July, so we haven't fully analyzed them yet. We will get you the individual school site results, but they are just getting them today. So we want them to have a little bit of time with them, but you will get all of that. My plan actually is to put together for the board data binders with all, because we have a lot of survey data for you to look at, and then Katie will be putting together all of our assessment data, so you can all have it in one handy dandy place. So Jason.
Okay, on the parent survey, one of the nice things is we got fairly positive results, but I also want to start by thanking the board, because one of the biggest differences is previously we only got 12%, so we got about 35%, almost 2,000 responses. And the family liaisons were extremely instrumental in doing that. So thank you guys. These are some of the little things that make a big difference of us getting feedback and having the liaisons be able to take on some of these tasks. Also important was, again, principals and people giving us feedback. Much of the difference in what we got back was us putting our heads together and doing some of the simple things. Instead of mailing them home, doing things like having teachers give them out. Many of you obviously have elementary students. One of the things was that talking to us parents about what we do every night, which is look at our kids' homework file and stuff. So we started using some of those different tactics, and that's one of the reasons why we got such better results this time in getting 35%. So as we go through the surveys themselves, I think you guys have gotten the information, but some of the pieces we also saw was there was some differentiation between what you saw with elementary age kids and what you saw with secondary on some of the responses. And so trying to bridge the gap a little bit, some of those were things like the communications and things like that and being involved. I don't know if we're ever going to bridge that completely, but again, trying to bolster that for our secondary sites, because it seems like those things were fairly consistent that the secondary sites were. Some of the pieces also that we have added, I think, got us not negative results, but more positive results in the elementary schools. Having like those full days where teachers are off and getting to meet with parents, we saw those kind of paying off for the elementary schools, because then I think parents felt like they were more involved, getting to have those longer meetings, obviously, with all their teachers, and be able to do those things seemed to make a difference. So some of the places we scored really well that I was happiest about are those most important and vital. So again, we were at 84% of do you feel safe at school. Mm-hmm. Also, the results I gave you were only those that we categorized as favorable, meaning the top two categories, which would be good and excellent. We got very little in the lower one, meaning that most people still thought we were satisfactory in almost all those particular pieces. We got very little negative result where people thought we actually failed on things. Overall quality of schools, 85%. Overall academic growth of their children, 82%. Do you feel welcome? And again, this is where some of those family liaison positions, 86%. We saw some really big jumps from the previous survey. The one thing is we're not going to spend a tremendous amount of time looking at the other survey because it was only 12%. So, I mean, we're going to say, okay, yeah, we got some jumps, but the bigger thing is this gives us a baseline to go from here. But we did see some of those things. Again, contacting who you know at sites, 86%. And is my student involved in a meaningful way for their education? Again, over 80% gave a full favorable, which again was good or excellent. Some of the areas we saw that I think we need to bolster, our facility cleanliness was only at 72%. Parent input, that was the one where we saw the very drastic, more than 25% difference between elementary and secondary, again, on the sort of input thing. And again, the nutrition program was only at 65%. We felt like that's something that Jim has been working so hard and all of our people that also maybe we need to communicate more with all the work that we're doing. We saw that a little bit with parents. I think that we've been doing lots of work on different things, but again, communicating those things, I heard you guys talking about that as well. Were there additional questions on the surveys or things of importance or things that we should look at this time that you guys would have questions about?
It's always hard to compare to last year because our results were we only had a 12% or 14% return rate, but in almost every area we were better, which was nice. it's nice to see some of the tie-ins between some strategies we've used in our strategic plan to these results. I'm hoping the data is true, even though only 12 to 14% took the survey last year, that some of the pieces that we put in place through the supplemental concentration grant funding are having an impact for parents. So we actually have not yet, as a management team, analyzed the results together, but we will be doing that in September to see if there's anything that we see in the strategic plan that we need to modify or adjust based on these results. Having been a secondary school administrator, it's trying to find meaningful ways for parents to be able to feel like they're giving input into their child's education or on their educational goals like this question is asking. It's always a challenge. I know as a parent of now a middle schooler, having 6 teachers to communicate with becomes more of a challenge, but it's a good problem to do some focus groups around, I think, with secondary parents about how to reach out to them more. We are rolling out this year the Aries gradebook, and we're asking that all of our teachers use it so that parents are secondary teachers. Many of them are using Edline right now. The joy of the Aries gradebook is teachers will no longer have to bubble their grades in. It will just pull from the gradebook system. But we're opening up the parent portal, so parents will be able to go on and look at grades, test scores, attendance, discipline. So you'll be able to go on and check out your students' attendance and any discipline. And eventually we'll turn on the transcript function too, so a parent could go on and look at a draft transcript for their student at the high school level. I think that will help with some of this. I love it as a parent. I have access to my middle schoolers' information. And I can say, hey, you missed an assignment here, and she usually forgets to put her name on it. So, but she can follow up with the teacher. So, and it's also nice for kids to be able to go on and make sure they're monitoring and tracking their progress.
Also, the Aries gradebook is going to be a nice piece for teachers as well. I think that teachers are going to be really happy. There's lots of online resources for them that go along with that, and different portals and things where there's information on almost anything you could think of. It's really becoming interactive, and Aries has kind of broken down the walls for third parties. So one of the things is when we go again in October that I'm really excited about that I saw last year was all the different pieces. Some of the districts last year when they really broke the walls down, all the different resources for teachers. I know we have things that oftentimes look cool and all these things, but I think this is one of those things that could help teachers do a better job and make it easier for them and make their time much more economical as they're trying to get resources, and also being able to share with other teachers. There's a lot of pieces. Aries is now more than 50% of the state of California, so it's also opening up to a lot of sharing. So I think it's going to be an important piece for teachers, especially as things are changing so quickly. So teachers aren't having to reinvent the wheel all the time and be able to share resources. So I think that can be an important piece as well. There are also 5 additional questions, like number of computers and what percentage do you have computers at home. We're up to 78% of our population has computers at home. 86% said they had internet access, which are really important pieces because we're talking about communication. And I think that's kind of been the theme of the night as we're talking to some of those important pieces as well.
And keep in mind, that's 30% of our parents. So 78% of this 30% who took this survey have computers at home. So just keep that in mind.
You know, on that question, I was wondering if, as we keep rolling out the Chromebooks, when I read that question, I immediately assumed my own personal computer that I own, and I'm wondering if there's a way to include something like including Chromebooks, so we know that, you know, at least those students have access to, and that might raise that percentage quite a bit.
It will, and the other nice pieces we looked at too is that Aries is now integrating with Google, which makes it much easier with the Chromebooks and those sorts of pieces as well. So that was kind of a nice piece that's kind of emerging.
Carolyn had a question.
Trustee Barrett?
I just wanted to say I was amazed at the 30% return. I think that was really good, and I hope that we gave kudos to the family liaison people and all of the sites.
Yes.
That's great.
The only thing that saddens me a bit, my shining star was no longer here, was Jeannie. She had the highest percentage, and she popped 254 bags of popcorn. So she was keeping me updated as we were going, because we were keeping counts the whole time, and I was updating everybody.
Yeah,
so
they did a great
I was gonna
job.
give her kudos. It makes me.
So how was she doing that? When the parent turned it in, they got a bag of popcorn?
The kids.
Actually, by classroom. She had created a classroom competition. We also encouraged different sites and things. That was part of it as well, having classroom competitions. So there was.
They
there
worked
was a
really
lot
hard
it.
to get to
They
the
did.
30% level. We,
did.
we followed up pretty closely with them.
Trustee Mulgard?
Any Spanish speaking at home versus English speaking at home breakdown?
Well, one of the things is that
You mean
it does say by
percentage
grade,
return?
but we also asked if there was, there's nothing specific to that end, but there was specific is, one of the questions was, what are some things you'd like to do, or what are some barriers to communication? And so we asked the question, what percentage of parents was barriers to communication? And I think we're roughly only 12% said it was one of the barriers to communicate.
Of the 30%, yes.
Yeah, of the 30% as we went through. And again, I think the family liaisons are helping that out tremendously. I'm seeing that on a daily
Unfortunately, we
basis.
can't break this down by demographics. We could probably hand monitor who turned them in English and Spanish, but we'd like to.
And I'm wondering, is the Aries parent portal easily accessible by a smartphone?
Yeah, so one of the things is that all of Aries now, as of last year, is HTML5, which at the time, we weren't thinking just a smartphone, but also tablets for like PE teachers, when we started looking at these things. Also, campus supervisors, principals being out, being able to have and monitor those things. We were always interested, for example, at high school, because we hold dances, for example, off-site. So being able to have those things can be really important, or if you're at a sporting event. So again, that's something we've been looking at for years.
And I don't know about anybody else, but I had a heck of a time figuring out how to get on Edline.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm an employed person who uses a computer at work. I could not get that thing. So what is the rollout to train parents in using Aries?
So I think there's a couple different pieces that we are going to go through, and we're going to offer trainings. Then the other issue too is just logging on. You asked the important question, we were talking with Jason, is that one of the things we'd like to do is have a single logon, not only for Google, but the Google logon is the same as your Aries logon as well, and that's something that Jason and I have talked about since we first started looking at what Aries can do.
So, Ann, we talked about this issue, how are we going to get parents on and get them trained? And so at the beginning of the year, people will be given, parents and kids will be given some information. You have to have your student ID, which is different than your state ID. So there's some information that you'll need. We'll also do some parent education pieces, and we'll probably do some registrations through our different parent groups, like DLAC and other groups. Once you get on, it's really easy. You just,
And a big push at back to school nights too.
Yes.
If they have them on different nights, maybe some of us can go help at the different schools to get people.
I think the biggest piece is getting parents their student's ID number. Because I know right now, for my other two students, I went to add them to my account, and I don't have their ID numbers, so I have to get that
You
info.
don't have those memorized?
No,
You call yourself a mother.
I'm gonna be calling the office staff.
But the
So
kids,
we will be working
the
on that.
kids all have those memorized.
Yeah,
All
but
right,
now,
is,
now it's getting a little crazier. There's the CESA's ID,
Right.
there's the perm
We have
ID,
3 different
and then you
IDs.
have your yearly ID now. So it's
Right,
it's getting more complicated
so
as we
we'll work
speak.
with families to
Yes.
get them on and using
all
it.
right.
It's a great
Trustee Mulgard,
tool.
are you finished?
I am, thank you.
Trustee Nelson?
The access to internet, do you know if that was cell phone or normal?
It didn't break
Dial-up.
down.
It's not that.
But we actually, when I was looking at the question, we were looking at that, because one of the things we think that the reason why it's going up the percentages is we've looked at different times, even at school sites, like at Palm looking at that when they were doing those pieces, is again, because people have cell phones. And they're
Okay,
doing-
and I just want to, one concern that I have is living out in the country, I don't have access to internet like some of the folks that live here in the city, which I'm still cranky about. It's because we live in a community that isn't really wealthy. I think it would be great for us as a board to help support movement forward to provide better internet, rural internet access. Cell phones, yes, they work. It's wonderful. I'm so thankful that I have one. It costs a fortune. So, anyways, if our only access for a lot of these kids is on their cell phone and they're paying $50 or $75 a month, that's expensive.
So one of the things we looked at last year is there's some new pieces that, like $5 pieces and things like that for low-income families. And actually, one of the things that as we sit down with the liaisons, we're gonna look at that as well, of what those options are.
Through Comcast, but you have to have access to it.
Yeah, thanks.
I mean, that's a
for-
bigger state issue, really.
It is. It's a huge issue.
It
I know
is.
that there's some folks in our community that are working on it. I haven't heard much recently, but
I
it's
agree.
Kind of a big deal.
There's, I've been reading some stuff on that, and because of the increased competition, and because of the threat of the legislature to mandate more services and at a more reasonable cost, there appear to be a lot of things in the works that are going to make options available to low-income families, if not all families. So there may be some hope in the future.
And may I ask one more question? I know with the old program that we had, I found very little information underneath my kid's name in a Gesundheit. I'm wondering how is the part of teacher adoption, so there's actual content on there so we can monitor our kid? How does that, because I know that kind of change can be hard sometimes.
Katie, can you talk about the professional development plan?
So coming up this next week, we have the initial ARIES training for the teachers. So both the middle school and the high schools will be getting trained in ARIES with a ARIES trainer coming for 3 hours. And then we're providing 3 weeks of follow-up training because we know we have some people that are more tech savvy or more comfortable with that, and we know others that, still need some support. So we'll have open labs 2 nights a week for until right after Labor Day for any staff that still need help or they're not finding help at the site. And Jackie Sherman is going to be doing that training. And then the other thing is when we met in leadership, we agreed that the principals would work with their staff to understand that the expectation is that teachers every 2 weeks, at a minimum, every 2 weeks are entering in grades, and so that people can go and it's actually accurate.
Any further questions?
Tyler, I also think there's another piece is that also making the system easier for teachers to use. And so one of the things is that when ARIES and some of these other grade books originally came out, they were difficult for teachers. So I think as they get easier for teachers and just becomes a part of how they do things, I think you're going to see some improvement in that as well. Because again, it's been very difficult at times for teachers to do that and to update that this is much more of an integrated part of your grade book. And I think as they see it, it's beneficial and not so arduous. I think it'll help out.
It will make their lives easier,
Yeah.
really.
Okay. Thank you, Jason.
All right.
Jason, thank you.
All right, item D3, resolution for the exemption to the separation from service requirement. And
Yes, so
Nicole?
as you know, when we have retirees, they can come back and do services for us, but they have to wait 180 days before they're allowed to do that. There's an exemption, that this is a new possibility of adopting a resolution that we would then, this resolution that we would then submit to STRS, and upon their approval, the people identified in this resolution would be able to come back and do the services that are identified, and you can see in attachment A, the 2 teachers and what their services would be. We will have to adopt this every month, and we can't put it on consent. It has to be adopted outside of the consent agenda. And I'm not going to read the resolution, but we have to identify who the people are and what they're doing. They can't have had any sort of retirement incentive. They can't come back and fill in for their own vacancy. But as you know, we're working hard to get mentors for all of our new teachers, so we've reached out to some recent retirees. I would anticipate that we come to you with a few more next month. And now that we know that this is out there, in the spring, we would come to you with those that will be retiring. We can submit this to you before they've retired, and then not have to wait, because we will have to wait until we get approval from from CalSTRS, before we can have them start service for us.
I move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, item D4 through D15 are the first readings of the new board policies. Are there any board members who have any questions or additions? These are only meant to be examined, and they would be adopted at the next meeting. Trustee Barrett.
There was just one thing I noticed on the one, now I don't remember exactly which one it was. Well, I have the number 6158, where it was talking, or where it was addressing the independent study. Okay, D12, thank you. There were a couple of places where it mentioned Casey and Star, and I don't know if this is the time to update that, but we don't give either of those tests, so I thought if we're updating, we should take that out also.
Yes, I thought we could remove those, but
Okay.
yeah, we'll double check. Good catch.
Yeah.
Are there any other trustees who have questions? Okay. So we shall approve those at the next board meeting. Item E, 1 board member representatives to committees.
So just as a reminder to the board, we decided to shift this from December to August because our committees typically run from the August to June. And board members currently serve on the District Advisory Committee, UTA negotiations, CSEA negotiations, and the City Schools Committee. And the members from last year are listed. So this is just a time to either make some changes or leave people where they are.
I think we were, I know I was dreaming about the duo of Nelson and Fernandez moving to the UTA negotiations.
That was your dream?
That was my dream. You're my dream team, because you were so
Everybody good with
successful
that?
with CSEA.
All right. Are you
That
willing to
sounds-
accept that?
That sounds exciting to me.
All right. Okay.
Sounds good.
And we don't need to vote on this. I think it's just appointing, right? So the UTA negotiations next year will be attended by Tyler Nelson and Zoe Fernandez, the dream team. Now, the CSEA negotiations.
I would suggest B, Arkin.
Okay.
Well, I thought Carolyn wanted to do it, and it.
Well,
are
we
you
have
gonna
two,
call-
we need
We
two
have two.
people.
Right.
So would you,
Right, two.
are you willing to accept it? B?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, and
Yes.
Carolyn?
I will accept.
Okay.
The
And-
other
Alright.
dream
And
team.
Gail, what are you gonna call us?
You are the queen
The
team.
the team dream.
Oh, dear.
Team dream.
Okay. And trustee Mulgard, are you willing to continue on the city schools committee?
Yes, unless Ms. Van Sant would like to arm wrestle me for it.
I'm more interested in the district advisory committee.
Okay, all right. Unless someone else would prefer to take my slot, I would be willing to continue that, and then, along with Ms. trustee Van Sant. Is that okay? Everybody in accordance with that? Any problem? Okay.
You guys are
All
so
right,
easy
so
to
we
read.
have completed the appointments to committees. Okay. Oh, my goodness, all right. So, the revised governance handbook.
A couple of thoughts on this. We've updated the section the section on superintendent evaluation to reflect agreements we've already made on that. And then we tried to craft some language around the discussion that the board had, I think in February or March, around adding a board member, adding an item to the board agenda. We also took out a whole section that was there that was outdated, that really now is in the strategic plan framework and action plan. I'd like to propose to the board, there are other sections in this document that are getting a little outdated. My thinking is that when we have our governance workshop, we can work on those longer sections and update them or decide if we need them there anymore. So this is for the board for approval or any revisions.
Are there any questions or concerns?
I hate to be a knucklehead, but I did not go through this line by line. And so is it just the changes or the ones that are just lined out? How should I have known that there were changes in it?
Yeah, the changes are lined out. And then any additions, like in the, so there are a bunch of pieces lined out, and then under superintendent evaluation, Tyler, that is section, topic 11. There are line throughs and bold, just really changing the timelines around that as we've discussed already. And then there's a new section under topic 14, board member request for agenda item. And Debbie and I took the conversation that you all had last spring about this and the diagram that we created and put it into language in here. And just a recap on that, at the end of the board meeting, the board president will ask if there are any future agenda items. And if a board member requests a topic, the board president will take a straw poll to determine if there's enough interest in placing the item on the next agenda. If so, the item is added, and then at the next board meeting, staff will inform the board about how much work we think it will be to do that item, and then at that point, the board will decide to carry it over for a staff report.
When Deborah and I were discussing this, we were going back and forth about how do you decide what item can just be dealt with quickly as an agenda item and what requires more time and effort and should be a special not a special meeting, but a board study session, something like that. We haven't really had a clear process for that.
Remember also, this is a working document, so if, if we sit with this for a few months and it's not working, we can always modify it.
Trustee?
I wonder if we should think about or add in there, what if a board member brings up a topic that really is not something that we would be discussing, like, let's say they said how much we charge for football games, for example?
Yeah.
What do we do if it's not something that's really a board decision? Where would that get filtered out?
If it's a topic like that, I would
For
just
example, that was a crazy
basically
one, but-
say, I'd be happy to include that in the next TGIF. But I think your question, Zoe, is what if there's a topic that's brought up that's beyond a policy, it's more of a detail?
Right.
We would have to decide if we're going to agendize it and in what format. Is it an information item? Is it a board decision?
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there were a couple of things that I had thought about. I mean, and I have no idea which category they would fall into, but since there's this constant discussion about preschool, and I don't really know what the status of the preschool is and what the relationship is with the district and what we're doing to make sure that the preschools are functioning as they should be, and can we do more to expand preschool? Should that be a priority of ours to try and, as they release new slots, to try and secure some of those slots, since it appears to be beneficial to our students, especially our English language learners. I can't tell you the difference between the kids who came next door from the preschool into the kindergarten. It's amazing. So, I mean, that was one thing. So we were just trying to figure out a way of how you deal with that.
The other thing before you tonight is the 12-month board agenda planning calendar, and we've tried to lay everything out there that is routine, and then also we've gone through the strategic plan to try and think about what are the key points where the board is going to need to make decisions on specific items in there. So those are all reflected in there. We've tried to capture as much as we can so that the staff knows their work for the year, and they can plan ahead on that. So anyway, that's a helpful tool too. And if there's anything that you can think of tonight when we get to that item that you want to see added as a board agenda item, we're also talking about board workshops. And what Gail is describing is probably a more lengthy, in-depth look that we might want to handle in a workshop as opposed to a regular board meeting.
But as in the past, we've sometimes had 7 topics, and so, just whatever the board thinks is the most important or should be dealt with sooner. So, that was, so, the understanding is that we can approve this tonight, but that is a working document, and we can change it whenever we need to, all right? Sorry, Trustee Barrett?
Well, I thought Deb's suggestion that we look at this further in January, is it? Might be a good idea. I went through it quickly today, and I thought, wow, I'm glad I went through that before the meeting tonight. I mean, it's good to refresh your memory on these things periodically, processes. But there's some of this, like you said, might be outdated, that would take a little more time to go through.
All right. Trustee Mulgar?
I'd be happy to vote on it tonight if people want to do that. On the very first part, the unity of purpose, it says that the Ukiah Unified School District mission, vision, goals can be found in the strategic plan framework and the strategic plan action plan. I guess I would love an abbreviated one in this section, because if we're having a disagreement and we're referring to these rules, what we want to be keeping in the forefront of our mind as we resolve the disagreement is that mission, vision, and values.
We can insert it in here.
So I would, maybe not all the detail, but maybe just like, just a little bit of it.
The framework is like, I think those pieces to the framework are maybe 2 pages.
Okay, so you could either do that, or you could even how they have like a sentence and then some examples? You could just even fluff away the examples and say the more detail is in the strategic plan framework. Just something.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, good idea.
Thank you.
So do we want to address that tonight, or do we just want to address that in the January meeting? Do we want to, as we were saying, accept this tonight, knowing that we will be changing it in January, or do we want to change some things tonight? Trustee Nelson?
I would like to make a motion that we accept this document this evening.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
Yeah, just as a follow-up, that I think it is a good idea that in January we do revisit it, or sooner if somebody has a axe to grind.
Okay, all right, all those in favor, we need a motion then to adopt it. I'm sorry, we voted.
They're voting now.
They're
You're
voting.
asking
Aye.
for a vote.
Aye.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right. The next one is the board workshop dates and topics for 2016 and 17. When this was on there, I had spoken to Deborah because I thought that perhaps it might behoove us to not look at this and adopt everything in one night. That sometimes, if you don't have a lot of time to think about other things, and you don't get this until 4 days before the board meeting, that there might be something else we would have rather. So my suggestion was, and Deborah agreed or was comfortable with, that we not approve this tonight necessarily, but that we consider things for the next meeting.
This is item E3.
Mm-hmm.
We thought we could brainstorm topics tonight and then finalize it next month.
Board session.
That's a good idea.
No,
So it looks like career tech ed is an option that you're suggesting.
Yes. I would also like to propose, and I don't know how the board feels about this, but for our governance workshop, that we consider having Jim come back. I know that's a bigger discussion, but it's always nice to have him come and facilitate. I know
we skipped him this year, didn't we?
we did a book
We
study
did.
this year.
Might be nice to have him back.
I think it's a good idea too.
I think it's a good idea.
I'm not down on Jim.
However, you don't need him.
Oh, okay.
Lost interest.
Okay, so, but we'll just get a list and decide next time. Right?
Other topics the board wants to study more deeply?
I'm not sure, I mean, we're just tossing up ideas, so I
Yes.
could cross this one out. I'm not sure if it is a workshop, but I do wonder if early education, pre-K, including the Head Starts
Yeah.
in the state, because you kind of brought that up. I don't know if it's a workshop or not, but it might be timely.
Mhm.
I feel like I kind of ignore and forget about the preschools. I
No, that
don't
was my
remember that
thought.
they're connected.
And I think that would also address the questions we've had about how intense is our intervention in first grade, because that's so important according to all the research.
But we would be looking at
And
pre-K.
Oh, I thought you were going, or when you said early education, I thought you meant pre-K through 2, which is usually, okay, you just mean pre-K, that's fine.
Yeah, but I mean, it may be better for a board, I don't know if it's workshop worthy or just board meeting worthy.
I think it probably is with all the changes that are coming. I think it would be, we could probably maybe put that with something else that's a little, may not take 2 hours. Maybe we could do a 2-for-1. We also have the facilities master planning process this year coming up.
I was just going to suggest, and I don't know if this is appropriate or not either, but a more in-depth look at our properties that aren't being used.
I would like to tag on to that if I may. Housing is incredibly difficult to find and very expensive. We have a winery that is adding 30 new spots down in Hopland. We have a school there that would be wonderful to subdivide and turn into apartments or small domiciles. I think it'd be really interesting to daydream about what we can do with our properties.
I'm into daydreaming about housing as well.
If you think of any other topics between now and the next couple of weeks, I know it's been a long meeting, maybe you can email me.
Mhm.
Data, or do you want to?
We're doing that.
We're already doing that as a part of a regular
We won't
meeting.
count it against one of your workshops.
Okay.
Deb, I forgot what we did last year. We did sports.
We did the EL, we did
EL.
English learners, we did athletics, we did special ed, and we did our governance workshop.
Yeah.
Special ed was the year before,
Yeah, I think special ed was the year
Oh.
before.
No.
because
It
Aaron
was.
Gardner was presenting,
It was Aaron Gardner.
so it had to be.
So it had to be the year before.
So there.
I know there was some talk last year, I'm trying to recall all the things that have come up. The after-school programs was an interest. I know we did a presentation maybe a year and a half ago.
Yeah, that's what I had.
Yeah,
the one-
after-school programs would be
Yeah, we did that.
interesting.
Because I was curious about how successful we are and who we're serving, and are we giving the slots to the people who need them the most?
And we're not there yet, but I did notice that you were recommending that one of them be conducted in December. And I think that the CSBA conference is in Northern California. So that's been really useful when I've been.
I noticed that too. I thought, oh, that's
So
gonna
if we're
put
there
us
for
pretty
3 days,
busy.
most of us are there for 3 days, you might not want to also have a.
So we'll look at the calendar again. We'll come back with some more ideas on specific dates. But you're right, it's a short month and we will be at, a bunch of us will be at CSCA. Anything else right now?
You mentioning data?
I did, but they said they wanted to do data in a
We're
regular meeting.
doing a data presentation. I think it's on the 12-month planning calendar maybe for next month or October. I think it's October on the 12th month. So we're already doing, that'll be a component of our board meeting.
You know,
Are we getting testing up
when
in
I went to the
next
board
month?
presidents, oh, sorry.
Carolyn, did you have a question?
Have you met her?
She answered it.
Oh,
I was
okay.
just wondering about testing update, when we're getting that.
When I went to this, trustee Nelson?
Just hanging out.
When I went to the board president's workshop, they had done a workshop on the relationship between data and the LCAP that everybody said was fabulous. So it would be really neat if somebody was interested in going to that. But they might have some good information. Anyway, all right, we done? Okay. So any ideas will be emailed to you, and if not, we will consider what we have so far at the next meeting. Okay, all right. All right. Approval of the 12-month board agenda planning calendar. And who is presenting?
Oh, I talked a little bit about this on the last item. This is just really our every month laid out, and the topics by department that will be covered. If there's anything else you think that we've tried to scour all of our documents to make sure we've got it, but if there's anything else you think we missed or you would like us to add that you can think of right now, we're happy to. It's pretty comprehensive.
Looks,
Good, I hope it makes your lives easier.
Yes.
looks like a lot of work to me.
Yes.
All right, so do we have a motion to approve it?
I move that we approve.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, item E5. During a closed session, the board voted to deny a return to student AA 81120.
They have to vote on it in open. They didn't take action in closed.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's why I'm here.
Anybody want to take this over? We need a motion to deny the return to the high school of student AA 8112016.
I so
First
move.
quarter.
Is there a second?
Did we have to put in what the?
For the first quarter.
I'm reading what I was,
Oh,
okay.
I see.
All right.
Sorry.
All those in favor? Is there a second, please?
Aye.
Okay. And the board is to vote for the return of student BB 08112016. We have a motion to approve.
I move that we approve.
A second.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Item F2, the superintendent's report.
Oh, I think I've given a lot of information today, on both from the leadership report and all of these items today. I am really looking forward to the school year starting. We do a ton of planning, and I can't wait for kids to come on the first day of school. Our school sites are getting ready. We've had a lot of teachers here this week, which is always fun to welcome back teachers. I truly miss them. And we start our professional development next week. We have how many new teachers coming tomorrow, Nicole? 45-ish new teachers coming for our new teacher workshop tomorrow. We will be taking them out on a school bus to tour our school district and talk about all the great other places that they should go, hiking and dining and everything else. So we're excited about that. And then next week we start our professional development days. On Wednesday, I would love to invite you all to our all-employee welcome afternoon. And we have a great speaker coming. He has developed a bullying prevention system. He's a really dynamic, great speaker. He's originally from California, but he's the director of educational supports for the state of Colorado and was a professor at the University of Oregon, and he's a super dynamic speaker with a great message on how to create a culture on campus where bullying is not tolerated. So we're happy to welcome him. He's from San Jose originally, so he was really happy to come here. And I think that's it. There are a lot of exciting and great things going on in the district already. We cannot wait to welcome our kids back.
All right. Is there any board member who has a report that would add to the knowledge of the board?
I have a question.
I just think that Deb should be sure and find John McCann.
Yes, I should
Yes.
find John McCann.
Trustee Arkin?
So tomorrow, Deb, I missed it. You start at 8, but you don't start till 8:30?
Sorry, for the new teacher orientation?
Yes.
Continental breakfast.
My spiel is at 8:30, so come at 8:30-ish, or a little before is fine, and I'll introduce you.
Is it here?
We
She
can't
doesn't
have,
want us to
we
eat.
can't come in and have
Well, of
goodies?
course you can.
Okay, so 8:30, that would be fine.
Yes, and I forgot, I need to publicly acknowledge Nicole. As we all know, there's a huge teacher shortage in California, and she has just done an amazing job along with the school sites and the departments in recruiting people. And I really thought that we were not going to be able to find enough special education teachers, and we've done it. So I want to thank you all. We have an awesome, and for Irene and the Personnel Commission's efforts as well, recruiting classified employees. Several of our staff spent days at the fair with a booth, reaching out to the community about our school district and the job openings that we have. So they've spent days there, really. And I really appreciate them. We have a wonderful team in our district, and I appreciate you all very much, so.
All right, item G1 through G34. There have been no questions raised, so may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move the consent agenda as presented.
A second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And planning?
Wednesday, August 31st at noon.
All right. I will be here.
I did it last time.
I can do it if somebody else can't do it.
The 31st.
31st at noon on Wednesday?
And Carolyn, Gail will not be at the September meeting, so we should make sure, if it works for you, that you'll be there, because you'll be running that meeting.
Okay, so I should come to 31st?
And so am I doing it? Yeah?
Carolyn Gale, is
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I missed the board member's report to add to the knowledge of the board, so I just wanted to throw in that in my work life versus here, the volunteer life, in my work life, I do supervise the public health department. And so they do have environmental health there, so if anybody sees a conflict, let me know. But really, I just think it's helping to have more people talking. And just a one-sentence explanation that environmental health is not in charge of the environment. They are in charge of food service and making sure it's healthy. And they have issued 2 clean reports to our kitchen in Ukiah High School, one last August and one just this week. So I just wanted to clarify that. But if anybody needs more information, you're happy to call me in my work life as well.
All right. I move that we adjourn.